Hi, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ who celebrates recovery from many things, including the fallout from bipolar disorder, and my name is Dustin. In case you're not aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, I have the privilege of being the mental health champion for the CR here at Rock Point Church, and what that means is I help our CR leadership, our group leaders, and our sponsors better understand how to care for and integrate those with mental health conditions into our recovery family. What you might not know is that there are a lot more of us with mental health conditions than you may know. For instance, did you know that 1 in 5 people in our country have a diagnosable mental health condition each year? What that means is it goes beyond the regular feelings of anxiety and depression into a place where it can be diagnosed by a mental health professional as impacting their life severely. 1 in 5. Now, when you start talking about those who struggle with addiction or compulsive behaviors, that number goes up significantly. Did you know that half of all people with a substance addiction also struggle with a mental health condition? Likewise, half of all people who struggle with a mental health condition also have a substance addiction issue as well. So whether you're coming from the mental health side or the addiction side, it's 50-50 no matter which way you slice it. See, facts like these make it easy to see that a mental health awareness and support is something that impacts all of us, especially when we celebrate our lives and our recoveries together. Now, this has never been more true than during these recent global pandemic that was affecting the 213 countries around the world. Now, the mitigation tool that many countries have turned to as an attempt to stem the process and spread of this virus was social distancing. This included changes like stay-at-home orders or closures of gathering places and individual social distancing, even of 6 feet apart when one-on-one situations and scenarios. Now, while this appears to have changed the course of the virus and has lowered the infection and mortality rates drastically from what they were initially projected at the beginning based on not taking these steps, they've also taken a toll on the mental and emotional well-being of all of us. Now, this is particularly true of those who are already living with a mental health condition. Some of the most basic tools many of us relied on to maintain our mental wellness were suddenly limited or even removed. If you're like me, handling change can be a real struggle. Part of my stewardship of bipolar disorder that God created within me is to maintain a consistent and scheduled lifestyle. When I suddenly found myself working every day from home and only leaving the house when I absolutely had to, that schedule kind of went right out the window. Now, the challenge for all of us is to find a way to take care of ourselves and each other a little better during this pandemic, and particularly those of us that are experiencing mental health struggles and disorders. May being Mental Health Awareness Month, it's nice to have that extra support, but we need to be able to apply this to ourselves as well. And since this is Celebrate Recovery, we have to have an acrostic, so we're going to use the acrostic of CARE. Now, the C in CARE, that stands for connection. By now, we've all experienced a sense of disconnection that's resulted from this global pandemic. Many of us are experiencing this in different ways. Maybe it's physical disconnection that comes with having less presence in each other's lives, not being able to meet face-to-face or for a cup of coffee or to even share a hug. Maybe it's an emotional disconnection that comes with having to navigate a sea of different feelings and reactions related to not only the pandemic, but also its impact on our health, our economy, and our lifestyle. And also, if you're like me, an increased sense of uncertainty, maybe concern, loneliness, or even frustration, not only about the pandemic and its impacts, but in life in general. These are becoming more and more prevalent. Now, one of the best ways to combat this is to focus on connection. Specifically, we need to seek good connections and bad connections. Examples of good connections are use of video chats and social apps like Zoom to have regular, maybe even daily conversations with our safe family, friends, accountability partners, and your recovery family as well. Now, these connections can be spontaneous, but also should include some regularly scheduled and planned ones. You can even use these platforms to play games or have a themed party. My family and I recently, you notice the shirt says Escapee. My family and I recently did a virtual escape room using Zoom to connect us, and I had a really good time. We connected with my brother in Chicago and various members of our family, and we were able to sit down and have a really good time for about an hour and a half of fellowship and fun and puzzle solving, and it was good. And it was all based on being able to leverage the social media and video chat platforms to help create that good connection. Now, some examples of bad connections, those include habitually connecting with social media, such as Facebook or Twitter. Now, neuroscience has very clearly taught us, especially most recently, that continued scrolling through these sites tends to polarize our thinking. It kind of encourages us to identify in one camp or another, one tribe or another, based on whatever the current social media issue is that's being presented. Our brains tend to want to put us in this or that categories, instead of being in one category, which is God's creation. Now, this polarization increases anxiety. It can create depression and anger and even greater disconnects than we're used to, because it creates alienation and discord in some of the relationships that we normally wouldn't experience this with if we were in any other experience, like face-to-face or side-by-side, that are just unique to this social media type of environment. Now, God's designed us to be used in relationship and to stay in relationship through connection. So the C for connection, seek some good connections in your life. Now, the A in care stands for awareness. One of the recurring themes in my recovery is that I'm usually the last to know. Now, what I mean by that is that when my anxiety grows into mania, for example, I'm usually the last to notice. Now, my wife, my kids, my family, my coworkers, my forever family, they all notice right away. And they notice because I become more irritable and less coherent, maybe more emotional and less reliable. You see, they notice that change in my behavior because it has an impact on their lives as well, oftentimes for the negative. Now, they'll notice that right away, but I'm usually the last to notice. Now, once I become aware of the issue, however, I have the power to make choices that can change and that can heal and that can make things a little bit better for everybody around. You see, increasing our self-awareness of our thoughts, our actions, our feelings, and our beliefs and behaviors, it goes a long way towards self-care. So one of the ways that you can increase your awareness is to conduct what's called a heart check. In a heart check, you ask yourself these questions. Am I hurting? Am I exhausted? Am I angry? Am I resentful? Or am I tired? Now, you ask your question of yourself as, am I any of these things more than I usually am? And this is a good indicator that if you are answering yes to any of those questions, your mental health and your recovery both might be a little bit more at risk. So if you have answered yes to those, I would encourage you at that point to reach out to an accountability partner or your sponsor right away and have a conversation about it. Now, Romans 12:3-9 points out the importance of self-awareness like this with this heart check when it says, be honest in your estimation of yourselves. Hate what is wrong. Stand up for what is good. The R in care stands for routine. Now, this pandemic has created major disruptions in all of our daily lives. Now, if you're like me, you may be struggling to get a handle on how to do even some of the basic day-to-day things that were once almost automatic. My routine that going to another place to work in another location around other people usually demanded that I take care of myself and do some self-maintenance things that right now have all but been destroyed. Now, my stay-at-home routine mimics a lot of the symptoms of my depression, and that's confusing. For example, I sleep way too much or way too little. I take showers much less than I used to. I eat much more often and at pretty weird times and sometimes some pretty weird things. And my wardrobe has been whittled down to about 2 pairs of shorts and 4 shirts that I wear. Then I only rotate to the next shirt when my wife says the previous one is way too funky to be around. I don't know if any of you can relate to that. That's my experience. But you see, establishing a routine, that's an essential tool in maintaining mental health and wellness. It's also an essential tool in maintaining forward progress in our recovery. So this means that we have to take intentional steps to build new routines that we're willing to follow. Now, God tells us all about the importance of a routine in our lives when he talks in Ephesians 5:15 and 16, which says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. Now, here's how you can get started. You're going to want to write down a schedule, not just think it through or have an idea what it's going to be, but write it down and document a schedule that you will follow each day. Now, it doesn't have to be overly detailed and include everything, but it should include some basic things. For example, when do I wake up? When did I take my medications if I take them? What are my meal times? When do I take breaks to pray, to meditate, and to journal? When do I stand up or stretch or go for a walk on a scheduled basis? When do I text or call or video chat a safe friend, family, or accountability partner? And then when do I go to sleep? You see, each of these things is an essential part of your day, and scheduling them in writing allows you to create a predictable framework that you can live your life around. In other words, it creates stability by making some parts of your life more automatic because you just do them on schedule, and that gives you more resources to work with and less to have to manage all at once. The final letter of the acrostic is E, which stands for expectations. While the vast majority of us are practicing social distancing, many of us are either working from home or maybe not even working at all. And closing out all of those social gathering locations and canceling all of those social gathering events, and all of the distancing from each other to stay safe, even the practice of wearing masks where you can't see the facial expressions of other people, even strangers in public places, it seems more and more of us are interacting with the world in a way different manner, but we aren't changing our expectations from our old expectations. We expect that our recoveries and our lives should be swimming along unchallenged or unchanged, even as our lives are anything but the same. We look into the homes of our friends and family through the lens of social media, where we often see the best versions of a person that they can possibly broadcast, put out there, and we expect that our lives should be equally as perfect. Now, unfortunately, when these elevated expectations rarely end up as reality, it can lead to frustration, anxiety, depression, and a negative self-view. Now, once those feelings and patterns begin, it can be hard to stop them from taking over the rest of our lives. Now, we can combat this by establishing realistic expectations of ourselves and of others. Here are 3 simple ones to start with. Number 1, it's okay to not be okay. Think about that for a second. Think about the idea that having flaws is fundamentally fine. One of Toby Mack's favorite quotes I saw was that God only uses broken people because there are no other kinds around. And that's true. It is okay to not be okay. So don't expect yourself to be okay all the time. Second expectation, everybody struggles. I am not alone in this. If you realize that you are not the only one going through this weirdness, this sense of sometimes not getting it right, this sense of disconnection, or the sense of struggle or even failure, you're not alone. Everybody at one point or another throughout the day, the week, is experiencing that. Some maybe as much or more so than you are. So you're not alone. You're with people that are broken. And broken people are the best people because they're all people. And then the third one, God loves me no matter what. It doesn't matter if I succeed or if I fail. It doesn't matter if I have my stuff together or far from it. It doesn't matter if I'm struggling or if I feel like I'm sound. God loves me not because of who I am, but because of who He is. And that never changes. So if you find yourself struggling with unmet expectations of yourself, apply these standards of grace to yourself and to your struggle. And you'll find that maybe your struggle isn't as pervasive and as punishing as it might be in your expectations. Also, if you find yourself struggling with other people, you can extend these standards of grace to them in their struggle as well. I hope that this roadmap to care will help each of us, particularly those of us who struggle with mental health conditions. I hope it'll help us find a path to better mental health and a path to a smoother and better recovery. The good news is God has a direct message of hope for us in these times, just like we're experiencing now. He tells us in Isaiah 43:2 that when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. And when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. No matter what we're going through, we're not alone. God cares for us, no matter what we are doing, no matter who we are, and no matter where we are, even if that's staying at home in our own living rooms. Thank you for letting me share.